Thank you, everyone. Welcome to the Community.o workshop. I'm Tanya Lattner with the LLVM Foundation, and I'm really glad that everyone could come here and talk a little bit about Community.o. So I'm going to breeze through this really fast because we started a little bit late. So just keep that in mind. I'll put the slides up afterwards. It will all be great. Okay, this workshop is hosted by the LLVM Foundation. We're a 501c3 charitable organization. What that means is that public charities must serve the public good. We have a 9-person board that's elected every 2 years, and there are several board members here in the audience. You guys raise your hand. Some board members if you want to chat with them later. So we support the LLVM project through a few different programs, such as the LLVM developers meetings. We have educational materials through Community.o, which is our diversity and inclusion outreach. We have a scholarships and grants programs that's primarily for students, funding them to come and present at LLVM developers meetings and such. And then really most important is focusing on community growth and health of the LLVM project and project infrastructure, dealing with things that no one wants to deal with, all the legal issues, and other cross-cutting efforts within the LLVM project. So what is Community.o? For some of you that may not be familiar, this is our rebranding of the Women in Compilers and Tools program, and also we called it Diversity and Inclusion, but Community.o is really our initiative to increase diversity and inclusion within the LLVM project, but also the field of compilers and tools as a whole. So why the name Community.o? I think it's a cute name, but it's inspired by the compilation model where object files link together for a final program, much like folks from different backgrounds come together to make up LLVM's community and have a shared goal of inclusivity. The name represents what the program hopes to accomplish, which is to build a strong, healthy, and diverse open source community. What does a healthy and thriving and diverse community look like? It's one that includes people from all backgrounds, genders, and experiences, ensures that everyone feels welcome, included, and empowered to contribute. We have a few goals: to increase the participation from a diverse set of individuals to the LLVM project through like co-contributions, leadership and volunteer positions, and speakers and attendance at our events. And we're going to talk about this more later in the workshop as we try to focus on this one goal. We also want to increase diversity of participation within the whole field of compilers and tools, to remove barriers and create an inclusive environment for all, and to work with other open source organizations who share common goals. You probably, if you've been to some of our past events, we've had other open source projects such as GCC, Rust, Swift, come together and talk about our common goals for increasing diversity and inclusion. So if you'd like to get more involved with Community.o, and I highly encourage you to do so, we have a Discord channel. You can also find our discourse category. And our keynote today is going to talk about one of our community groups, and they will dive down a little bit more into what they are and why they're beneficial for the project and for Community.o. So I won't go into it now. And also, you can get involved by attending events just like this one. So today's workshop, first we're going to start off with a keynote, Women in Compilers and Tools Meetup series, a case study on cultivating a community. Then we're going to have a panel reflecting on effective code of conduct in open source software. Then we'll have an invited talk about career building through open source. And finally will be the working workshop focusing on diverse leadership. And then later tonight, we will celebrate all our hard work with a reception. This event would not be possible. It's heavily subsidized by the LLVM Foundation sponsors. I'd like to thank our diamond sponsors, our platinum sponsors, our gold sponsors, and you will see their names on the signs all throughout the event. So we are really grateful for their contributions. And, you know, every great welcome talk has to have this slide in it. If you need the Wi-Fi, there it is right there. And with that, that's all I got. I breezed through that pretty fast. Thank you. I would like to now invite our keynote speakers to come on stage, and we will dive right into our keynote. Just give us like 2 minutes to switch over here.
All right, I'll get started. So firstly, thank you everyone for being able to attend today. It's really great to see everyone's faces again. And I'm joined here today, my name's Cyndy. I'm joined here today with my co-speakers, Tanya, Jubi, and Anupama. And this talk is going to be about our experience turning an idea of the Women in Compilers and Tools Meetup series into a reality. Sorry. Thanks. So first things first, what is the Women in Compilers and Tools Meetup series? It's a free, formerly virtual. We recently had our first in-person meetup a few weeks ago, and it was really great to see those people and kind of have those connections outside of a Zoom interface. And so it's a now hybrid event series. It was launched in April 2021, so it's kind of the peak of the lockdown, hence why it was virtual. And it's primarily a platform where all trans, non-binary, and cis women in various stages in their career and involvement in open source, compilers, languages, and related tools can speak openly, present their work, and just generally network with others. The series features technical talks, interviews, and even community bonding experiences like trivia nights and in-person meets and more. And it's organized by us volunteers. And so you may be wondering why we wanted to create the space, why we dedicated the time to starting this up. And I'm sure as an underrepresented person, you've walked into a room and kind of immediately acknowledged that you may be the only person that looks like the way that you do. And it's very easy to internalize those feelings and start questioning how you feel about your career choices. And we wanted to create a space where you can see other women thriving, making such great influences in the industry. And this was what the series is all about. It provides an ability to surface role models working in various parts of the compiler space. And it's just a comfortable space for anyone to learn about compilers and general developer tools. And we also believe that it'll help expand more women in professional spaces that we may not see today. And so there are a few questions we get pretty commonly when we talk about the Meetup series. The first one is, why do we need a special group for women in compilers and related fields? And outside of this personal experience of feeling alienated, we can observe the lack of diversity tangibly as well when looking through authors of research papers, conference speakers, and just general organizational leadership. And this series is an active effort into fixing this problem. Another common question we get is, can men attend the Meetup series? And the short answer is yes, everyone can attend. But it is important that our audience understands why we have these goals. And we have an active attendee put it quite nicely as, this group is for all who understand why such a group needs to exist. And then now I'll shift over to Anupama to talk about the series more itself.
All right, thanks. I'm Anupama. I'm going to talk about the meetups. So, okay, can you hear me okay, right? Yeah, all right. So we started this meetup series in April last year, and we've had 13 events and 12 speakers. We've had a lot of diversity in the speakers that we've had. We had professors and grad students, recent college grads, and industry veterans. We've had people from, as you can see, various industries and research labs, and hopefully very soon some hobbyists too. And people spoke about their work and their life's work and personal growth. We explored various topics. We had talks ranging from description of the LLVM backend, global ISL, Community.o, and then a lot of students presented their research work. And another interesting slant that came out was through conversations and also through the material that was presented was about taking research work into industry. How do you do that? How do you identify gaps and try to fill it through your work? How do you select your mentors, professors, research topics, etc.? We were very fortunate to have a lot of talks on career growth, people presenting their life work and all that they lived, all that they did during in the field. For example, we had a talk from Uma who spoke to us about her life's work and with the Itanium project. And some elements of the talk really stood out, like one of which was about, she was saying that she didn't know what her passion was, but no matter what company she joined or what role she took up, she always found herself back in the compiler team. And so she figured out that's what, was her calling. And and it was also great to see that several of her past colleagues were also at our meetup. And it was great to hear those conversations and, reinstating, that you take your community with you, when you change jobs and roles. So it's good to have that group of people outside your work. And outside this, we've also had community focuses like mental health issues, mentorship, balancing work with life, interesting or important tips from people who've been there and done it about, either working part-time or taking some time off and how to manage those, and some very real-life, concrete, tangible things that you can take back to your everyday life. So here's a chart representing the spread of the talks that we've had, but in a sense that it's not very accurate too. The lines are not as well defined as you see here. Everything has, there's a lot of intersection and overlap between talks. As I was looking at it this morning, I was thinking that this pie diagram actually represents each of the talk itself too, as opposed to the set of talks, in that every talk had a career component to it, a technical component to it, and there was a very engaged networking session at the end of the talk. And like our speakers, we've also had a very diverse audience of students, professors, industry researchers, developers, and people with various levels of contributions. So making a little plug for our series here that, level of contribution or what you do, that, I'm not in the industry, I'm a student, is not a deterrent to joining this group. It's kind of open for people doing various things. And as Cyndy mentioned, it's not exclusively for women. And we've had good engagement over the series. We want to make it better, of course. It's also been great to see a set of repeat attendees and a very engaged audience. With that, I would like to pass the mic to Jubi, who'll talk to us, who'll reflect on the.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jubi Taneja. So while you have all heard more about how our meetups have looked so far in the past 1.5 years, I would like to take some time to walk over the reflections, basically to see what are the lessons that we have learned, what were the major themes that we covered in our talks. And before I dive into that, I think I want to use some time with you all to engage with each other at your own table, so you can discuss at the table about some of the questions that we thought could be interesting. So we can share some common reflections, maybe at the end of these 5 minutes of this discussion with you all. So, for example, we can start with some of the questions. The first one is, do you find it harder to ask questions on open source platforms or on the open discussion forums? Do you find yourself in a very judgmental mode, like someone is judging you on the basis of code that you're writing? Maybe you find yourself in a situation where you're like, okay, if I have to send a review comment, how would somebody perceive me? Do you find it harder, or how often do you review your emails when you have to send it out to your managers with some code snippets or to somebody else in your leadership? And do you seek opportunities to be highlighted at certain events when you make any contributions and yet you don't know whom you should approach to or how you should start with that process? And at the end, do you seek any community or any support system to figure out any career growth opportunities, or maybe to have a very transparent conversations about the salary compensations and so on? I would like to give this 5 minutes time for every table to discuss this, and then we can get back with some experiences if anybody wants to share that at the end. All right. I guess it's pretty good to see this engaging conversations going on, but we'd like to stop for a moment. And I'm very glad to see this kind of a heated up room now. Not a heated up, it's more like a warmth in the room, better, because everyone was talking. So I'm sure there are some experiences which maybe some of you would like to share. It would be interesting for us to know like what you reflected on and if there is any common experiences which we have had over the 1.5 years. And now you can share some. There is Mike over there if anybody wants to go and share something. Any experiences? I mean, there was so much going on. Okay, so that is real.
That's me. Okay, so what we were kind of talking about at our table was actually more of the perspective of somebody who is starting in Swift. And she was kind of talking about how it can be kind of intimidating to ask questions on the forums as a newcomer, but she finds it a lot easier to talk to people in person in a smaller, more intimate group where you get kind of direct feedback from, the people that you're speaking to in person. And so we kind of started talking about, like Mike started talking about a bit like, what are some ways that we can kind of integrate that into our community? Like, could we have some like newcomer cohorts, that kind of thing, to kind of break the ice and kind of get people, like bridge the gap between talking between a small group of people to talking to 500 random strangers on the internet, which can be quite intimidating. So that's the theme of our table.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
At our table, the theme was exactly the same. The gist of it is people felt comfortable reaching out to people internally to their company because they know them, they know how they're going to react. And as soon as they need to send something out publicly to people they don't know, everyone gets really anxious and spends 10 times longer on preparing stuff. And so basically it's the same, I think.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I won't keep like harping on the same topic, but I will say this is actually the perfect opportunity for anybody that's new. Today and tomorrow and Wednesday, great days to like break that ice, meet new friends, put faces to names and things like that, and have those conversations, because then when you go back to work and your life and all the things that you're doing, and all of a sudden you want to ask one of those questions, now you've got a whole room full of people that you've made acquaintance with, and it makes it just that much easier to ask those questions. So please do that.
Yeah, that's true.
I'll agree with that. So when I started in compilers, most people in this room were not born with digital back in the 1980s. Over half of my group were women. My first 2 compiler mentors were women. One's a senior director at VMware right now. I don't think I would have learned half the stuff I know now without the women in the compiler group. And it has amazed me for years to watch it turn into this male-dominated thing. And I think it really comes back to this thing. When we started, you didn't have an internet. You didn't have the animosity. When you talked to somebody, you had to walk down the hallway and knock on their cubicle door and talk to them face to face. And you learned the person's technical skills, but you learned them as humans, as people. Mm-hmm. And the internet has washed all that away. I don't know anybody, I mean, I know most people, but we don't have that connection anymore. And I don't know, has that driven women out of the community? I don't know. But I find it sad looking back. It's like most of the people that I learned from were women.
I think that's a very good insight. And most importantly, I think, while each one of you came up to share the discussions that happened at your table, there's a common theme. Like, all of us feel very uncomfortable when we are not having the face added to the discussions. And that's what makes us more afraid, more anxious to bring up any questions or something. So it goes from the student level. I don't know about the much experience because I'm not there yet, but I can just say it from the junior students to whom I talk to, and they also share the same thing, and I share the same thing today as well. So I think the question that you raised at the very end is important to figure out, but it's also important to figure it out collectively, not individually. And this is why we need a space, a more comforting, and a community where people actually feel first that they belong to this community. So they can talk freely, they can share freely, and they can learn together from the beginning till the end. So this was a message that we wanted to share through this kind of a discussion, and we wanted to bring it up with all of you. So there were some common themes that we have seen across these events that we have hosted over the last 1.5 years, in which we definitely learned that mentorship is really valuable. Everybody here seeks a mentor at some stage of their career or in their grad schools or whatever. And there is a cost to the hidden labor. So as a woman or as a person who belongs to a minority, they engage in a lot. For example, people engage in peer review process. They review the papers, they review the proposals. Sometimes they are just participating as an external collaborator or just as an invited external reviewer, or they are a part of the panel discussion, or they are interviewing to add more diversity, to add more perspective. However, this kind of efforts and time that goes into the hidden labor is never counted towards our career growth. So we need to rethink such questions, that if we are taking out our time and efforts towards these ventures and initiatives, we also need to utilize them in the right way. And imposter syndrome has been such a real thing. It still exists. It has not gone anywhere. Just because we can say this, that, oh, I have this kind of a syndrome, does not mean that it's being handled. Sure, we have just started to address it, but it happens with the newcomers. It happens with experienced people too, whether they are professors or they are industry researchers or developers. And work-life balance can be very hard. We have had speakers who spoke about figuring out in their careers whether they have to choose the part-time jobs at time so they can manage their personal life too. So these are real issues, and we should not be afraid to talk about real things when we meet people. So these were the common themes that we have seen across the talks. But while I'm talking about the common themes, here are some important technical and non-technical learnings that we have seen over our meetup series. For example, in our technical lessons that we have learned from a lot of our speakers, we learned how to write compilers. Specifically, we focused on global instruction selection to start with, how we can learn to rewrite global instruction selection for a new architecture, how to write this link time optimizations, what are the parameters we have to keep in mind, how to run the performance experiments, how we can debug the compilers, how we can use some static profiling techniques to figure out the gaps in the existing compilers so we can improve them. And there was an interesting talk at the very end, like a month before, in our meetup series, which focused on human-computer interaction, which was a new for one of our events, in which we figured out that we can use all these techniques to improve the learning of compilers itself. So those were the different flavors we learned, and we learned from our researchers who came and presented. Equally important were our non-technical learnings, in which we learned that the learning groups and collaborations play a vital role when we have to learn something new, when we have to kick off new projects. And these collaborations that we start, they eventually become our support system. And just like Anupama mentioned to you about Uma's talk, who have had like 30 years of experience in the compilers industry, we learned this through her, like how the collaborations that she had built 30 years ago have now become a support system for her today. So this is important. And there are two more important reflections that we learned through our meetup series. The third is that the repeated attendees that we get in our community, they bring that belongingness culture to our group. They are the ones who make us feel that our community is growing more stronger and more closer. So we need people to come again and again, back and again to our meetups so we can build that culture in our community. And most importantly, all the talks that we have seen were not the result of first time submission and they got accepted without any criticism or rejections. So rejections are a real thing. They happened with everybody at all the stages, and they still exist, and we are part of it. We just have to learn through our rejections instead of just isolating ourselves. But while I'm sharing all these lessons, all the learnings that we have learned, there has been a few challenges for us through this meetup series organization. The first and foremost has been our outreach efforts. We use Twitter, we use Meetup, we use LLVM Discourse, and all those channels to promote our events. However, it is still harder for us to figure out how should we reach out to different people all over the world, not just here in US or the neighboring countries, but all over the world outside our personal networks. So we cannot do it alone. We need your support too, to promote this event, to let people know how they can engage in these kind of communities. And RSVPs, when they happen on the meetup, they are usually not very precise for us, because since the events are very virtual, so the plans change and so on. So the idea of sharing our challenges with you all is that you can also help us figure out how we can grow this community. Thank you. I'll hand it over to Tanya.
Okay, I'm going to talk about some of the reactions that we've gotten to our series. So we've got some really great and positive comments. The first one here is, I'm glad to find this group that is friendly to trans women. I'm getting stronger and stronger, willing to come out as transgender to my colleagues and community. I'd like to seek advices and suggestions from you. Thanks. The next one. I enjoy your events, and I really appreciate the time and effort you are all putting into building a community. I think you and the group are playing an important role in the broader computing community. When we get these comments, it's fantastic. It really makes us appreciate all the hard work it is to put this series together. But on the flip side, we do get many negative reactions. And quite frankly, this is just a small sampling of them, and I'm not going to go through and read them all to you. Most of the time when they pop up on our YouTube channel, I delete them right away. But we do get a steady stream of negative comments about, why are you only featuring women? This is sexist, things like that. And the slew of inappropriate jokes as well. And why are we bringing this up? I think it's really easy. Like I said, we just delete the comments and brush it under the rug. But I think that it's not good to do that. It's good to bring it up and show that there is quite a bit of a negative pushback against us for doing this. And we hope that if you see this in your communities at all, that you call it out to them. As we continue on with this meetup series, we're trying to, think about our goals and how do we measure success. We're really trying to create new relationships between women in the compiler and tools community. That's one of our big goals. We really want to highlight the work that women are doing in this domain, and that's technical work or the common challenges that women are facing. And lastly, we want to continue to grow the community in representation at events and conferences, in leadership and contributors to open source and LLVM. And until we can visually see the changes, we don't feel that our work is done yet. So a few takeaways. We may be underrepresented, but our presence can be felt and now seen. The negative comments are unfortunate, but we will not be deterred. Community spaces are a wonderful way to feel supported in your career goals. And now I'm going to hand it over to Cyndy again.
Thank you. And so, as Tanya said, the community groups are a really great way to feel a part of a bigger ecosystem. We felt empowered by creating a space where we can regularly see each other and discuss with each other, and we want to provide that for others. We've been able to map out a step-by-step of sorts that is hopefully reproducible for others. The foundation also supports resources for creating your own subcommittee in the compilers and languages space. And as we mentioned, the Women in Compilers and Tools Working Group is still learning, and we hope to guide other communities as we continue to grow our community. And so what does growing look like for us? As we've mentioned, we had our first in-person meetup a few weeks ago, and we thought that was so successful that we'd love to have a consistent cadence of being able to see people face-to-face for the Women Compilers and Tools. And then also we know that employers are constantly looking to hire diverse talent, and we'd love to share this more frequently and publicly with our audience. And this can be presented in something like a newsletter that people can look at consistently. Additionally, we'd love to support more educational resources in our talks. And this can be both technical and non-technical skill building, so something like public speaking, and then also things like how to debug through a large code base, learning a new testing framework, how to traverse an AST. And then we also know that our community has a ton of expertise, and we'd love to kind of cultivate that into focused panels. And one way I see this working out really well is having a bunch of hiring managers come together and talk about what they want to see in ideal candidates. And then finally, in the spirit of Community.o, the Women Compilers and Tools Meetup series has never been just about LLVM. It's about the whole field of open source, compilers and tools, and language design. And so we'd love to have more joint organization meetups. We had one with PyLadies UK with Anna Osoweski, and we'd love to continue doing that with other organizations. And then hopefully you've picked up on this, but the beautiful part of organizing this meetup series is that we've created a space by us, for us. And we believe the best way to be in a thriving environment is to be active in it. And so we are kind of having a call of action. If you have listened to this today and are interested in following up, there are such small ways that you can get involved. And this can be letting us know what you find engaging, what you'd like to learn about. If you are preparing a talk for a conference and want to get some early feedback. If you're a student taking a compilers course and you just want to meet someone who's built a professional backend and for your toy backend, this is a great audience for that. And then also just inviting your colleagues or a new employee that's joined. And so finally, I hope you all enjoyed this talk, and if you're interested in revisiting any of the topics of this series, as Tanya mentioned, we post most of our talks on YouTube. We encourage you to join our meetups, be alert whenever there's new meetups going on. And if you see us in the dev meeting, please feel free to say hi. We'd love to hear from you. And thank you all again for attending. I hope you can enjoy the rest of your conference, and we are open for questions.